Well, welcome back to the third part of this time conversion example. So far, we've been through this and we have created a flow chart, which you see on the left, and our pseudocode, which you see on the right. Now it's time to actually code this in Python. So hopefully at this point, you've already downloaded and installed Python. At the very least, Python the language and idle as your IDE. If you have downloaded and installed an additional IDE, awesome. Go ahead and use that and load it up right now. If not, I'm just going to work this example using idle because it's a relatively simple example and I want to show you and demonstrate how that particular program works. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and run idle on my computer, and it's going to come up and it's going to be in interactive mode. This is not where you want to start doing your scripting. Over here, I want to go file, new file, and this is where I will start doing my coding. Now I'm going to leave the program up and I am going to leave my pseudocode to the side so that I can kind of see them side by side while I do the particular process. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick file save as, and I'm going to make sure this is saved where I'd like it to be. So here I'm going to save it into my 1400 files. This is going to be my time conversion. Okay. Now, I will enter in whatever comments I want at the top. Remember, comments come in as a hash symbol. Okay, so here I'll put in my name and quick time conversion equals the date for 2023. Okay, now it's time to start taking our pseudocode apart and seeing if we can do it in Python. Now, the one thing in Python is it is a dynamically typed language, which means you do not need to declare variables prior to using them. Okay, we also do not need to give them a data type prior to using them. Although very nice to have in pseudocode. Some languages force you to do that, Python just does not. Okay. So here's what we're going to do in Python. We're going to move directly down into our IPO process. The input process. The prompt and the getting of input can be done at the exact same time. Python has an input function, which allows me to put information on the console to display it, a prompt, and gather information essentially at the exact same time. So here's how this works. First thing I'm going to do is I know I'm putting in a variable called starting seconds. So I'm going to put starting seconds on the left hand side of my equal sign. Now, since this is all capitals to represent that it's going to be a named constant and I can't camel case, I am going to insert an underscore between my words just to give it a better readability. That's just me though. I am going to assign this to, so make it equal to, a function that's built into Python, which is called input. Okay. As I start doing this, okay, we're going to notice a couple things may go wrong as we start working our way through, but essentially I have input and here's where I put in my prompt. So here's where I'm going to say enter a number of starting seconds. Okay, and there we go. Now, one thing you have to note about the input function is that it brings in information from the console as a string. Okay. We need starting seconds to be an integer. Otherwise, I can't do this math. I can't do a string divided by a number or a string mod a number. Like that math doesn't exist. So I need to make sure that starting seconds comes in and is turned into a number, but this input function simply won't do it. Just to prove it to you, let me do this. Let me print the type at starting seconds is. Let me run this really quick. And I enter in some starting seconds, doesn't matter what it is. Notice it shows up as a string. That is not something I can do math with. So what I really want to do is I want to take this string and turn it into a number. So since this function here gives me a string back, I would like to also put it into an integer function. This over so we can see it a little better. And I'm going to wrap it in this int function, which means my input's going to come in as a string. I'm going to take whatever it types in, whatever number I put, which is a string. I'm going to change it to an integer and store it in here. So now if I go ahead and run this, you'll see that whatever value I type in It'll say now that it's class integer, which means it's going to be a value I can do math with. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay. So let's take that out. Okay. Well, we'll comment it out. Now that's our input. Let's get into the processing section. Okay. The processing section says to set the hours equal to starting seconds divided by 3600. So let's do that. So we're not going to say the word set here. We're just going to say hours equals starting seconds. I'll say divided by 3600. Okay. And we'll do the next bit where it's seconds equals starting seconds mod 3600. So that'll give me my hours and seconds. And if I've done my calculation correctly, I could just do a quick print of that so that I can see it. Might as well give it a shot. Print, we'll say just hours really quick, just to debug anything as we start moving our way through. Easy development. Okay. So if I enter in a certain number of seconds, let's say I enter 3600 because I know that's an hour. It should say 1. But you'll notice it says 1.0. That is not really the output that I'm really looking for. I started with an integer hours. I want full hours. I should not be getting a decimal result. What I really don't want this to print is something like this. If I said that this was, 37.5, I don't want it to print 1.0416 repeating hours. I want it to print 1 hour because I want this to turn into a certain number of minutes and seconds afterwards. So how do we fix that? Well, there's a couple ways. I could do a more casting like I did before, or I could use Python's operations effectively. There is a division operation in Python, which is a double slash. We talked about this prior. That will round the division down. So since this is an integer and I'm asking it to do floor division or round down division with 3600, it will get the exact number of even parts of 3600 I have in my starting seconds. So let's go ahead and try that again. Let's type in our 3600 or our 37521 or whatever. Okay. And now it says 1, which is perfect. 1 hour. There is some parts left over, but there's 1 hour left over. Okay. And the seconds will be the same thing. The modular operation will return an integer as long as it's surrounded by two integers. Let's do the rest of our math. We're going to go with minutes equals seconds divided by 60. Notice I'm using the double slash here because if I use a single slash, it will give me a fractional part, and I don't want the fractional part. Full parts, integer parts is what I'm looking for, so the double slash works. And I can go seconds equals seconds mod 60. And that takes care of it for the processing. Okay. Now for the output section, close attention to that because there are some new features to Python that have been recently added, I'd say in the last year, couple years, that make this output process a lot easier. So you'll notice we have this starting seconds was and then comma starting seconds. The best way to get multiple pieces of information into your output is to use what we call a formatted string. If you put the letter F in front of whatever quotation mark, whatever literal string you're about to type, you can insert information into your string quite easily by saying something like this. Seconds was, and then in curly braces, I can put in the variable. And that will then not read as starting seconds in my display, but it will insert whatever value is in the variable starting seconds into the display. So now all I have to do is close my quotation marks and my parentheses. I could then do another print statement, F string, formatted string, and I could say hours, colon, and I'll say hours, print F minutes, There is your completed program. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and run this, if I hit File, Run, or Run Module, or F5 on your keyboard to do it as a shortcut, we should see that we can enter a third number of starting seconds. Now, if you remember in the quick little demo here, I had 17,321 seconds, 17,321. It should show 4 hours, 48 minutes, and 41 seconds. So everything is working out the way that we assume it to be. I didn't make any egregious errors here, but we did have to fix a couple of things, making sure that our input is of type integer when we pull it in, if that's what we're looking for. That's what we were looking for in this problem. Making sure that I'm using the right kind of operations to get integer results. This floor division is going to help me get that even number of parts, the even number of 3,600 segments in my starting seconds, the even number of 60-second segments in the seconds that are left over. There are a couple things that I could have cleaned up, completely unnecessary, but could have done differently. For instance, this line of code could also have been written as this: seconds mod equals 60. And essentially what that means is take your seconds, divide it by 60, and reassign the value to the answer as you start working your way through. That will work and do exactly the same thing. It's called a unary operator. 17,321, and I get the exact same result. Okay. These formatted strings are the best way to go about this. You can do it using comma separated values and things like that. I would suggest you get away from that and start using these formatted strings. If you were to spell something wrong, for instance, if I said hour here instead of hours and ran it, you will find yourself with an error, a runtime error, where it says name hour is not defined. You'll get this name error. Usually what that means, nine times out of 10, is that you made a spelling mistake. Hour wasn't defined because guess what? Hours was the variable on the left-hand side of the equal sign, and that's what I need to use. So if you run into those little issues, you can check them for yourself. The error messages are very descriptive, and they tell you exactly what line number the issue may be on and what to look for in terms of the error, whether it's a name error or a type error or some sort of arithmetic error or something of that nature. So look at that error message to kind of help you out. Again, hopefully this helps you out with your homework assignment and getting things moving in both terms of pseudocode, flowchart, and Python programming it. I'll take any questions you may have over this video or your project. Just let me know in Discord or via email, and I will be happy to share.